Guess what? I got a fever.
You give me fever, fever in the morning, a fever all through the night.
Okay, folks, welcome to episode 77 of the Dynasty Fever podcast. Finally, we're back together. The boys are back in town. The people have been waiting and craving Dynasty Fever for so long. Episode 77 is the Randy Thomas episode, a guard for the Jets, late 90s, early 2000s ish, somewhere in there. Pretty good player, but it is what it is. 77, more of a hockey number, Paul Coffey, Ray Bork sort of thing, But
oh man, Paul Coffey was so good in NHL hockey on Sega Genesis.
Sega Genesis, like 94, when you could like punch people in the blood and all that.
Yeah, 93, 94, the heyday.
Mm-hmm.
And then they added, I think it was 96, they added the one-timers, 95 maybe.
Something like
it was a
and
good
then
game.
One year they tried to take out the fighting and like it was like a flop. I forget what year it was, and then they put it back.
Yeah, I think that's around when I gave it up. But yeah, that game was so much. Everybody knew the move. If you're at a certain angle, just left, right, shoot, boom.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah,
and Paul Coffey was another forward on defense. He was great.
Just get stoned to beat the computer 17-3 or something.
My dorm whole floor we'd have tournaments.
Oh, cool. Sometimes when we bring up that game, I think about you ever see the movie Swingers?
Oh, sure.
Vince Vaughn was young,
you're so money you don't even know it.
Yeah. And there's that scene where they're playing the game, and there's the Wayne Gretzky's getting in a fight, and I don't know, just for whatever reason that moment always comes to my head when we talk about NHL. But anyway, Dynasty Fever has dropped to number 48 among fantasy sports podcasts in Iceland. So we're
talking about hockey though, so now it's going to shoot back up.
Maybe even lower now. Like I don't know. I hadn't checked it in a week. But please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review if you're listening on the audio feed. Please go show our YouTube channel some love. Subscribe, like, comment, watch videos, all that jazz. Going to be putting up more clips. Jesse's talking about putting up more videos soon, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. And we're here to kind of continue our unpacking of positions. We did a running back episode. We're gonna have Tom Tipple on to talk about like that tier of like 25 wide receiver twos, and tonight we're gonna do quarterbacks. We play pretty much in super flex environments, so that's kind of gonna guide the conversation there. I don't know that I might have one QB league left and a Debbie, maybe something like that. But
I have one left.
Yeah. So that's what we're gonna be talking about. We looked at each other's rankings and kind of saw some discrepancies here and there, and so we'll get going with our conversation. Anything on your mind before we kind of kick things off? Something that stand out to you? Anything you want to cover?
Yeah, I will say, just as I look at my rankings, with fresh eyes, I haven't looked at them in a little while. I may be a little low on Fields at 8.
Oh, okay. That's not something I expected to hear.
Yeah, there is the potential that he could develop even further and, develop as a passer. And I guess the theory is that they added a real wide receiver to help him out. I don't buy that it's the same thing as like what happened with Josh Allen and Diggs. He had already broken out, really.
Or Hurts and AJ Brown.
No, it's different. Yeah, it's DJ Moore. It's not the same thing.
DJ Moore isn't AJ Brown, and
right.
The passing volume on the Bears probably isn't going to be all that good.
Well, that's what we said about the Eagles this time last year, though.
True.
So that's what gives me a little bit of pause that it could happen. The coaching is what I'm a little skeptical on, right? Where with the Eagles, they're very concentrated on player development, and they're an offensive. They're the head coach is an offensive coach. They're an offensive first team, where the Bears are a defensive first team. And I don't really know enough about their player development, coaching, but I don't know enough. Like there's not anything there that says to me, yeah, it's going to happen, but it could. But I look at Fields at 8, below Lamar. He could actually be much better than Lamar if he hits a ceiling.
I could see that. I mean, what we're seeing, obviously, I don't need to tell too many listeners, the two-way quarterbacks, the guys who get you points with their legs, that's just like, it gives you that floor and it gives you a ceiling. And, they're going much earlier, even in redraft. Like if you're out in the best ball streets or looking at what like redraft rankings are now, like the days of like, oh, I can wait on quarterback, it's swinging back because of like not only the rushing quarterbacks, but there was like a historic year of like quarterback points or something like that last year or something. I don't know. I was reading whatever.
And how many people did wait and got burned on Stafford and Russ and guys like that last year? It happened a lot.
Yeah. So we were
my redraft strategy this year.
When we were last talking about quarterbacks, we were talking about this concept of the circle of trust, right? Like, who do we really feel good about? How many QBs do you really feel good about before you're like, kind of yuck, right? I think we were at like 6-ish in there somewhere, like 5 and 2 halves or something like that. I'm looking at my rankings now, and I think I want to say there's 6 or 7. And then there's a few questions that I have before I round out my top 12. Right?
12. Yeah. There's 12 good ones. There are 12 good ones, though. I've talked myself into 12 good ones.
Okay.
And then there's some rookies that could be good. And I'm sorry, you'll bring the next guy up in a little bit.
So Jalen Hurts, is he in the Mahomes Allen tier?
So when I read the show sheet, my first reaction was no, of course not. And then I thought about it a little bit, and I was like, well, yeah, he is. He was quarterback, 3 last year, 2 or 3?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay. And then I went and looked at Allen's, quarterback 1 multiple times. Mahomes quarterback 1 multiple times, top 5 multiple finishes for them, where Hurts just has the 1. And then actually, I don't know if you realize this, he was like quarterback 9 the year before because of the rushing. Yeah. So I mean, it does give him a huge floor, but no, not quite. He's not yet. If he does it again this year, probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But value-wise, not quite.
Yeah. Mahomes, track record. Allen, a little bit of a track record. Probably want to see another year of Hurts like at that eliteness to really put him in that. But his ceiling is certainly there, I think,
Oh, sure. Yes. Especially, if he does what he did last year again this year, then yes, he's in that tier.
So who else is in tier 2 then for you? For me, it's Hurts, Burrow, and Herbert, and it stops there. How would you look at that next tier of guys?
Yeah, and then what? Do you have T-Law in a tier by himself, or do you have like Lamar there?
I have him in there, or Lamar and Fields. Yeah,
and Fields. That's fair. Yeah, I mean, Herbert really does. Herbert really has had seasons that Trevor Lawrence hasn't yet, so he deserves to be in a tier above. Whereas I think Trevor Lawrence has the potential to be every bit as good as Herbert.
Yes,
it's the same argument with Hurts. He hasn't done it yet, so no, he's not in the tier.
Mm-hmm.
So once he does, I mean, Herbert came right out of the gate and did it. It did take T-Law a year, and still wasn't quite to Herbert's rookie year level. Even though Herbert did take a little bit of a step back last year, I expect him to fully rebound.
Yes.
Get Anthony Lynn. Is that who we're kicking out of town?
Yeah. I mean, Kellen Moore's coming in, right?
Yeah, Kellen Moore's coming in.
He was playing with like hurt rib cartilage a lot of last year. Mike Williams and Keenan Allen were in and out of the lineup. Like
we got some speed targets on another year of development for our third wide receiver. Who was that again?
Joshua Palmer, is that or QJ or yeah, okay,
yeah, Palmer. Yeah, and I guess you have somebody with some potential in QJ, even though I don't really like him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Eckler's primed for a season. He's coming back and pumped up. So obviously, I guess his little bitch whiny session didn't really amount to much, and he's ready to roll. He's posting tweets. He's a big fantasy player.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
So he's telling everybody to take him this year.
I mean, he's kind of right? Like they didn't really draft anybody. Like Josh Kelly looked better toward the end of the year last year. The team kind of likes him. But
he got back to looking like bad Josh Kelly. He just wasn't he was originally okay, which is bad, right?
Yeah.
And then he was really almost about to be cut and out of the league,
and
then got it back to bad. But he's still not league average.
So would you say your tier 2 is those 3 guys we're pretty solid on our top 5?
Yeah.
Okay. Any argument for Herbert over Burrow over Hurts? Any how do you have those 3 guys?
Yeah, I mean I have a hard time with Hurts and Burrow. And I think also Herbert could be in any given year could finish above either one of them in points. They all have that potential. But because Hurts, has the rushing floor and upside. I mean, he ultimately won the 3rd spot, but there was a lot of internal debate about that.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I have 6, 7, 8 as Lamar, Fields, Lawrence, but again, it's a tier, right? So they're fairly interchangeable. The reason that Lawrence is at the bottom of that tier is because of he's kind of the least rushing upside of those 3 guys. The reason Lamar is at the top of that tier is a little bit more of a track record, and I'm really kind of excited that whatever how can I put it? With Monken coming and saying he's going to run less, you're worried. Will the passing increase make up for that, right? But overall, I think it kind of is going to be kind of a wash as far as what level Lamar's at.
Well, we're going to find out. We're going to find out how good of a passer he is.
So that's my tier of guys, and that kind of ends the guys I feel really good about, and even Fields at 7. There's a story I can tell myself where, at the end of this year, Lawrence is easily above him, and Fields kind of has shown that, he's struggling still as a passer. Whether and how much of that is him, and how much of that is the offensive line, et cetera, whatever it is going to be. I can tell myself that story. So it's almost like 7.75 quarterbacks I feel really good about.
I mean, Fields this time last year, Fields was a pariah. Nobody wanted him. So it can go either way with him. It really could. He could absolutely revert. Just the coaching does scare me there, I have to say. But I feel good about the 2 guys below him. And really, I feel good up to 12, and then I have rookies, and then I'm feeling better and better about guys below this.
Okay. That's good news for me there. I want to hear that because
let's talk. Let's
talk. Right. Yeah.
All right. I'm here. I'm going to pump a little sunshine up your ass. Right. Deshaun Watson is going to eat this year. I'm telling you. I want to see
it. I want to see it.
I want to see it too, and I believe it. Right. They've brought in weapons. They've committed to a more open passing game. But they still have Chubb and the offensive line and can lean on it if they have to, right? So teams can't necessarily tee off on him. He's got a full off season, and without the legal distractions, it all should come together. We expected there to be rust last year, right? So to expect him not to come back to form is reverse double counting.
Okay. I like it. I'm not going to try to figure it out. I'm just going to let it go.
Cool.
I know. Yeah.
That's what I was going for.
Don't get me wrong. If I was a betting person and someone said are you going to bet on the odds that he has a really good year? I'm betting on that.
Yeah.
Me putting him just outside that circle of trust is like, I can tell myself the story that, you know, the rust improves, but it's just, you know, he's just not what he used to be. Or I can tell myself the story that, you know, they lean on the run a little more than I think they're going to, right? And I can tell myself a story about, you know, Dak and Kyler too, but, you know, yeah.
Is he your Scott Evil?
Scott Evil. Against
Dr. Evil.
Stop.
Dr. Evil's real son.
What's his face? Yeah. Why, are you saying I'm being mean to Deshaun Watson?
Like he hates him, he loves him, he hates him, but you know, he's like he hates him, but he's always sort of right outside the circle of trust. They make fun of him a little, you know, mini me's in the circle. Is that where he's at for you?
I think so. I want him in the circle of trust. Like there's totally a world in where this time next year he's well in that circle and Fields is kind of on the boundaries. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Dr. Evil wanted, you know, he wanted Scott in the circle as well, but he was such a little whiny bitch.
That could be
his words, not mine.
I mean, I don't have a good enough memory of the Austin Powers movies to tell you the level of Scott's whining. Yeah, I don't know why. I have a really terrible memory for movies. I don't know why. People are like, oh yeah.
I live vicariously through
weird things stand out to me in movies, like the NHL hockey scene from Swingers, right? Like that.
Yeah, right? I don't remember playing that. But so, and then, you know, you understand what happens after the Deshaun Watson conversation. It's my son, right? It's my son. He's sitting on my lap, eating up Skittles. He's number 10.
Oh, you got him up at 10. Okay, let's talk about this. Yes. You got Tua at 10.
I have Tua at 10 because that's where I feel his talent puts him, right? If you don't think, all right, let's take the concussion conversation out for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just put it aside, pick it up, put it next to us, and then go back to it. Where would you have Tua?
11,
talent.
Right? 11.
Okay. So I've done that. I'm real good at compartmentalizing, and so I've done that with Tua.
Yeah, and I have him at 13, and he's at the top of the tier below the top 12. Just for those folks listening.
Currently healthy, mastering jiu-jitsu. I believe. But seriously, like without all of like, you know, I believe in Tua crap. I mean, he's got elite weapons and a perfectly suited system for him. He showed it last year when he was in there that he's capable of putting up elite numbers. I just can't have him above Fields or Lamar because of the rushing upside, right? Rushing. He doesn't have the rushing, so he's a little. I mean, like he can move around in the pocket, but he's not going to give you that.
Yeah, but you have him above Kyler, which is interesting.
Well, because Kyler's hurt. Tua is currently healthy. That's the reason.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
And also, yeah, I don't. There was a thing where Kyler wouldn't run last year before he got hurt. There was like a weird narrative that he had stopped running, and then he had that one play where he like ran around for I think 17 seconds and eluded 15 defenders, and then threw a touchdown or whatever.
Yeah, I think we need to.
That he can still do it. He just was choosing not to for some reason.
So the reason that Kyler for me is above Tua is, again, like there's the rushing, and Tua doesn't have. Tua's concussions are like potentially career ending in a second, right? Whereas, Kyler coming back from the knee, even if his running is 80% of what it was by early 2024, we're still looking at a guy who, when he's been on the field, has put up really good numbers. But the reason that he's slightly outside the circle of trust is this idea of like, I think he has a pretty immovable contract. Like these people are like, they're going to draft Caleb Williams. I don't see it. No one's taking that contract. So like, how's he fitting in as the offense is building around him and growing? As the team is developing, like. Connor gone, is next year when, Hollywood's a year older and he's throwing to, I don't know, McBride, Dortch, Rondell Moore, and Michael Wilson, what's it going to look like, right? So I can tell myself a little bit of a story, but here's where I wanted to bring him up, though. The reason I love Kyler is the cost. He is sliding way down in startup drafts, right? Yeah. I saw him go in the mid-third in a startup I was in. He's usually mid-late second, but I mean, he went as late as the mid-third. He's the cheapest he'll ever be. So I would smash that.
I think he's been popping into the fourth.
Wow.
Stuff.
Yeah.
So don't be short-sighted on the Cardinals offense. So they had a really good draft this year. Emphasized some trenches, and they got the Texans pick next year.
Yeah. And everybody says that's Marvin Harrison Jr., right? Yeah,
they could potentially have 1, too. I mean, I actually think the Packers are probably the worst team in the league. And they'll probably have 2 and 5 or whatever. But yeah, I could really see them get easily Marvin Harrison. Okay. So, and not just that, they have a lot of other draft capital as well. If they want to build an offense, they can build an offense. It's just I see them adding weapons in next year's draft. This is a tank year for them.
Yeah, but also with Kyler, I understand that we don't really care too much about these things, but we kind of do. I don't know. It worries me that when a team puts in a contract, you got to watch film more. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
I hear you. I don't love that either. I don't love Kyler, but like you said, because of the cost, it's been like that all offseason. I have a bunch of them.
Yeah. So what about?
I probably got 3 or 4 shares real easily.
What about Dak? So the reason he's outside the circle of trust for me at number 11 here is because he doesn't have the rushing, even the rushing that he used to before he hurt himself.
His rushing was a little fluky because it was touchdown based.
We're probably looking at lower passing volume this year. The offense we think is going to change and pass less. However, they've been saying different with their personnel by not bringing anybody in to compete with Pollard and by adding Brandon Cooks. But we'll see, right? I just think
Brandon Cooks is just, that was sort of a desperation grab. They've been just grabbing at a wide receiver 2 for so long.
Yeah.
I expect their offense to take a step back. They lost their offensive coordinator, didn't replace him. It's Mike McCarthy.
Yeah, and he's 30 now, which again, it's a quarterback, but when you're lining him up against Deshaun, against Kyler, against your son Tua, it's a factor.
Yeah.
You've never really been, even when I liked Dak as a top 7 or 8 guy, you didn't like him. So what are your feelings on Dak?
He's a solid number 2 dynasty quarterback. So he's just outside of this tier. Mm-hmm. I don't hate him, but the offense isn't necessarily dynamic. They only have a couple of weapons that I trust, and I don't trust the coaching.
I've been getting him a lot as my quarterback too. So let's talk about a startup, right? I want to leave a startup with 2 of these top 10 to 12 guys. And if I got to trade up in the second to get that second guy to double tap, I'll do it because it's important in a super flex. Other folks are saying, well, I don't know, maybe with the slide of a couple guys, you can get them cheap like Goff and Cousins and Russ later, and maybe punt the position a little bit at the top. But that's not something I'm comfortable doing in a super flex.
So. Just a little history too. That's that was my approach 2 years ago. I'll take my anchor quarterback in the first, take a couple of anchor position players, running back or wide receiver, or if Kelsey falls, something like that in second or third, and then take Russ or Stafford. And some leagues both, back to back, and worked out great. Won a bunch of championships on startups that year. Cooper Kupp, Debo, those kind of calls. But then they were quarterbacks of age when I took them, and there was a reason why they fell that far. And then they lost a ton of value and had shitty second years. So just understand that, you're kind of making a deal with the devil when you do that, when you take your Cousins or Goff or whatever. Like your window, like Russ's window looks like it's opening back up and his value has built back up, but Stafford's hasn't yet. Right. It may in season, it may not. Right. And if Russ doesn't come out of the gates, if he struggles again to open up, it's going to tank. If he doesn't have a really, really good year, his value is going to be shit again. So just understand that they are quarterbacks of age or flawed quarterbacks, or, there's a reason that Geno Smith is Geno Smith. And, that one good year out of him could definitely be fluky. The flaws are real. Understand the warts, and you may be selling your soul a little bit. But if the rest of your team can support it, I'm not saying don't do it. Just understand what you're doing.
So you're lower on Dak by a lot than I am. Not by a lot, I guess. I'm at 11 and you have him at 16, right? When you insert Lamar in there at 8, right? So you have him below the rookies and below Danny Dimes. So sell me on Danny Dimes. That's one guy I wanted to talk about. Like, you have him at 15 and I have him at I think 16, 18, something like that.
Sure, he's unlocked. Dayball. I mean, not saying that the Giants have the greatest track record as far as player decisions or whatever, but they locked him up long term.
Yeah, because what else were they going to do at the position?
I mean, there's a lot of things you can do besides hand out a huge contract to a guy that you don't believe in. So, I mean, that tells me that they do. And it was quarterback 9 last year, immediately under Daboll. I believe in the rushing. I think the passing is good enough. I think the weapons they added are weird. I do like Hyatt, but everybody else is a slot. It's real odd, but his offense is also weird. And it's sort of chaos and unexpected. So I really do believe in Daboll, though. I did before he went to the Giants. I did before he went to the Bills. He's just a really, really good offensive coach and offensive mind. He does the unexpected. And I literally think that he unlocked Danny Dimes.
Yeah. Right.
And he's young enough and good enough. And God darn it, people like
him. Yeah. I think you've been spending a little too much time with Chad Mendoza, but I think,
dude, he hasn't been around, man. I've been doing solos. What are you talking about?
So he's one. I forget the number, but there isn't many seasons where a quarterback threw for over 3,000 yards and rushed for over 700. And Dimes did it last year.
Yeah.
Right.
There you go.
But I'm wondering how much of. Again, we don't necessarily care sometimes where it comes from, but we do if we think it's going to change. How much of the running was scrambling and stuff like that? How much of the passing was garbage time, coming from behind? Is that going to change a little bit this year? Was that a peak ceiling that you're buying in on now and not what it's going to be for years to come? I just has never really thought he's all that good to begin with. So I need to see it more before I'm putting him, above a couple guys that you have him above. I've got him below the rookies and Lance.
One thing I do have him below 2 of the rookies.
Yeah.
One thing I really like about him is his red zone rushing and their commitment to using him in the red zone and his skill set. You know, he can score 3 or 4 different ways in the red zone run. You know, up the middle, around the outside, passing. I'm not going to say he's a receiving threat, but like he can. There's more than one way for him to score in the red zone, and they use him that way. So it's a little Josh Allen-ish in that sense, where they will use him on the goal line, and like he's got a rushing touchdown floor, in my opinion.
Okay, so the problem I have with Vanilla Vic as well, and I think this is like where it becomes kind of actionable for listeners I
can't just brush over that. That just hurts my soul.
It's out there, man. People love it.
He's nothing like Vic. Maybe if he was left-handed, I don't know. He's nothing like Vic. Anyway, go on. That's ridiculous.
It's the acquisition cost. In startups, because it's startup season, I haven't really been in the trade streets with Daniel Jones much, to tell you the truth, right? He's going at the 409. I think that's fourth round is a little high for Daniel Jones.
I think it's a little low.
What?
I think late 4th round is a little low.
Like you think he's good to go? Like he should be going 2 rounds ahead of Cousins and Goff.
Yeah, those guys are expiring. Those guys have a 1 or 2 year window where Dimes has a 3 or 4 minimum.
Right, but at what ceiling when you're sackcrificing getting?
I feel like quarterback 9 this year.
When you get like Hawk or DK or Drake London or Eckler, and then get Goff later, like, right? Like,
but do you really want that 1 or 2 year window? Do you think that they're going to stick by that party line for that? I mean, Jamal Williams
was 28, and he's about to probably get a contract.
The
way he's playing. I mean, that's what the word.
The way he played last year, we'll see.
And they're not going to be bad enough to draft anybody. Hendon Hooker ain't it. Like,
well, Hendon Hooker is not it. No, I agree, but there are things teams can do if they want a quarterback.
Jones has age and ceiling. I just don't know if it's 2 rounds ahead of those guys and sacrificing drafting who you pass up. I don't, he's at the top of that tier for me, right? He's 18, and then I have like Goff 19 and Cousins 20 and that sort of thing. But like,
he's in a different tier altogether.
Okay, yeah,
the player I want versus the player I don't really like. Yeah. He's a player I feel comfortable as my quarterback 2, as opposed to like a backup plan. That's what Goff and Cousins should be, your backup plan. Or if you like want to go this 0 quarterback, which I don't like fucking with that. And that's not what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about
some people go QB 0 in Superflex, but like, what if you were able to get your stud in the first round, right? But you drafted in the early first, and so by the time it gets back around to you, you're looking at making Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, or Anthony Richardson goes even earlier, or and then like leftover Kyler Murray, which means you're punting on 2023 anyway. You're looking at making one of those guys your quarterback 2, when you could say, okay, I'll draft, I don't know, whatever, Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jalen Waddle, and then I'll get my quarterback 2 later. Like are you gonna you're gonna take your quarterback 2 as Daniel Jones in the 4th, is what you're saying?
If you're saying I got my stud in the first, that means I'm high, right? Then I'm taking Daniel Jones high 4th.
Okay.
So I'm not hugely above consensus, and I would have already taken Kyler in the 2nd somewhere, like end of the 2nd. Middle to end of the 2nd.
Oh yeah, he's disgustingly cheap, so I've been smashing him a lot. It just kind of means like your 2023 might be a semi punt, because you're gonna have it. Because in order to not make it that.
What about my blue Colt McCoy?
Well, Clayton Tune.
Yeah, no, I'm kidding. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, right. You're gonna have issues with this year,
right? Because if you want to compete in 2023 and you're drafting as a roster and not like draft for value, trade for need, you're going to have to then spend a pick on a 2023 QB2 that you would have spent on a position player. So now you're behind a position player because you're making up the hole you have for Murray missing, 8-9 weeks or whatever. And
you're in Hollywood Brown as a buy. So that means he's not a terrible player. That's all I'm saying, right? They also have Trey McBride as a young talent. Was a high second-round rookie pick last year. The rest of their shit is a little gross, but Connor's still got something left, I would guess.
Oh, I just mean that you're without your elite quarterback too for 9 weeks.
But once you get him back is what I'm saying is like maybe you get a little juice. Or maybe you can trade him at that point.
Yeah.
I don't know. What I'm saying is maybe his value rebounds enough for you to get back in it. I don't know. Or maybe you just find your Geno for a year.
So a guy who had problems on the field last year was Russ, right? And you and I think, are both sold on the idea that, like, with Sean Payton coming in, right, and a little bit more in shape, the bad coaching out, he started to win over the locker room. Like, we're buying the story of Russ as a bounce back, right, and that he's going to be better than he was in 2022. How much better remains to be seen, because